So who am I talking to?
It's Matt Nelson, president of CGC Comics.
Oh, that's your title, president, not CEO, or?
No, just president. CEO. That's somebody else. But
Okay.
yeah, just the president of the comic division of CCG is me. And well, CCG is the parent company, and under that we have comics, cards, coins, paper money. All those different collectibles that we grade. But I'm the president of CGC, which grades comics, magazines, lobby cards, pulps, and any kind of ephemera that's associated with comic books.
Tell me about the panel that you just hosted.
Yeah, so we just had a panel in C2E2 Saturday, and it's a panel on CGC grading. And basically in that panel, what I do is I've done the panel a few times, so I go over a little bit of background on CGC, but typically the audience at least is familiar with CGC, and a lot of them have submitted to us, as we saw, with the raise of hands. So I try to not dwell on that too much, and then mainly just go into the grading process, which is what people are mostly fascinated about, because a lot of people have a peripheral understanding of grading, but not too deep, and so they always like to hear about what goes into grading a comic book in the grading room at CGC.
Nice. So what does go into grading a comic?
Yeah. So it depends on the comic. I mean, we grade them all the same, but how fast we grade them, or how it depends on the era of the book and the grade of the book. So as I said in there, the higher the grade and the newer the comic, which is typically a higher grade book, those are easier to grade because you're dealing with a fewer number of defects that can be quantified. Lower grade books are tougher because you're dealing with a broad number of defects, and it involves kind of the narrowing method where you have to pick the most serious defects and see how those cumulatively affect the grade while ignoring all the small defects. So it's more of a narrowing. Instead of going minus, you're going, okay, well the book is around a 4.0, but it's kind of like, but it's got these defects, that are a little bit more severe, so maybe it's leaning more towards a 3.5. But really, it boils down to having a mental picture in our head of what a 4.0 looks like, what a 3.5 looks like, what that book looks like, because we've seen it thousands of times. And so that's really how the expert grading comes about, is because you've seen that book many times, and you've graded books in that grade range many times. And so together, you know what a 4.0 Hulk 181 looks like. You know what a 6.0 AF15 or a 9.4 Spidey 300 looks like. And, you've seen thousands of them or hundreds of them. And so it makes it easier to grade or to arrive at the grade quicker, when you've seen that many books.
Something interesting that you mentioned that you brought up the panel was how the paper was different in different eras.
Yeah.
Can you speak on that?
Yeah, sure. So generally speaking, the paper's the same through the 20th century, and that's going to be pulp paper. And that was created in mass starting in the late 1800s. Before that, it was like parchment and all these other types, which actually were better paper. So pulp comes along, and pulp paper was cheap, easy to process, but the problem is that it didn't have a long lifespan. And so pretty much everything printed on paper from the late 1800s all the way through the 20th century is pulp, and degrades at a faster rate because it has acids in the paper.
But you also mentioned the difference between like the Silver Age and the Golden Age too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that would be like the way they're printed. The paper, like the cover stock, was really what I was more referring to, because the cover stock is thicker on Golden Age books. And the interior pages are kind of the same, but the cover stock on Golden Age is thicker, and so it kind of it holds up better to defects, handling defects, and also aging defects. Whereas the Silver Age covers were printed on very thin paper, and that was clay coating, and that actually breaks down a lot quicker under not ideal conditions. So the covers are really where you see a difference in page quality or the type of paper that was used. But the interior paper is pretty much pulp all the way through. And then, of course, in the 2000s, started using calendarized paper, which is that slick, shiny stuff that they print the digital. It's digital printing, basically. So and those last forever. Those have no acids in them whatsoever.
Nice. Well, let's step back and ask a broader question about all this. So, why do collectors get the books graded?
Well, mainly to establish the grade, which establishes the value. That's the main reason. That's how it started off, was to basically create a level playing field in the hobby where people didn't have to depend on various opinions about grade. This dealer calls it this dealer calls it that, this collector calls it that. We all have our own ideas about grade that generally line up, but not really. They could be off. And also the other problem too is that grading back then was subjective, because typically the person grading the book was the one selling it or buying it, and so you had there was an ulterior motive the money motive was in there, which can sometimes affect the accuracy of the grade. So with CGC, having it being an independent third-party grading service, it took that factor out of the equation, and so we're impartial. We don't own the book. It doesn't matter what it sells for. It is what it is sitting in front of us. And so by doing that, it's built trust in the community where they trust our grading because it's consistent, over the years.
Wait, am I hearing you right? Where to a certain degree, it was about kind of holding businesses accountable for the way they were maybe not selling a comic book the way. Selling a comic book, inaccurately.
I mean, that was a side effect. It wasn't, CGC wasn't meant to go in and police the hobby,
right?
But inevitably, it did make people fall in line with making sure they weren't pulling shenanigans on collectors, the unscrupulous dealers, or people will call them sellers, who would try to pass off a restored book or a book missing a page or something. It held them accountable, and so it helped clean up the hobby in terms of. Any of those kind of people, it made them much harder to operate. But eventually also, there's other reasons why people use CGC now that have developed over the years. Like a big one is the holder. Like the holder, people love the holder. Mm-hmm. It frames the comic really nicely, keeps it safe. And so people use it for display purposes. They love their favorite comic, maybe the one that's been signed by their favorite artist. It's right there in that holder, it's safe, and it looks really cool in the holder. And then also there's like set building and the registry sets, the signature series, So there's a lot of other aspects to it that using certification helps, I guess, that reason why people certify books.
So pressing seems to be more and more accessible, more and more people know how to do it. I mean, I know of a local comic shop that offers pressing services. So why should someone press their books at CGC if they're getting their books graded by CGC?
Yes. Yeah, so obviously there's the ease of it, the fact that it's all under one roof and, you're saving on shipping, you're saving on time. But also, the pressing company that is CGC was my company, which started, over 20-something years ago. So I was the pioneer in pressing, at least in the certification era. And so, I was on the cutting edge with the pressing process, and that further developed once CGC came in and bought the company. And so, I know the secret sauce. I know how we do it at work. And in my opinion, based on that, what I see elsewhere, ours is the best in the world. Now, that's no knock on, all the other presses out there, because some presses out there do an amazing job, and they're going to, some of them can get the book to the same grade. But you have to be very careful about who you're choosing to make sure that they know what they're doing, and they're protecting the book, and also that you're covered in case something happens to the book, like if it gets damaged. That's another big thing, is that if we damage a book, we're paying for it. If it gets damaged in pressing, we're going to pay for it. If we damage it, through negligence, let's say, because there are some things that just can't be avoided, like a pop staple. There's just sometimes a book, and we have that covered in our language that you sign off on, the what's it called, the disclaimer. And so, some defects are unavoidable. But that if it's coming to us and we're going to press it, we're going to make sure we're going to take care of it. If something happens to the book, we'll take care of you. And so that's another reason why. But really, mainly, it's just because I just think, we press books consistently the best.
Right.
Because we've learned how to press all the books from 1933 to yesterday, like low grade to high grade. Basically we've mastered the process, is mastered every type of comic book, which most pressers can't say that because they typically will focus on certain eras of books. This guy presses modern comics, this guy presses Silver Age, this guy likes to press like Golden Age, and so it's hard to find a presser that can do everything all at once. And so that's another benefit of using the pressing at CGC.
And also, conventions are a huge part of what CGC does. Like a lot of people get their books graded. They don't bother getting a membership. Well, they do free membership. They just go to conventions. Let me hear from you more personally about why do you enjoy going around the country to conventions?
Oh wow! Well, I love to travel. I love going on a plane and landing and being in a different city. I just love that feeling. So that's number one. And I love the cities that we visit. So San Diego, New York, Chicago, LA. I love Shelton Show Heroes out in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a beautiful city. And so I love, the cities going there. Don't like the cold. That's a downside of some of these shows if it's cold. But the conventions themselves are so exciting because, I love the energy in the room and all the people that show up and the families and the cosplayers and the crowds and then also being able to see new collectors, old collectors, people that I know, the dealers, people that I don't know, meeting new people, being able to do panels, and be able to look at comic books, especially if we're doing on-site grading. And so it never gets old. It's just, I love the dynamic of a comic book convention. It's unlike any other convention in any other collectible, in my opinion.
And C2E2 is one of the few shows you guys do on-site grading. So how do you feel about C2E2?
Yeah. Oh, I love C2E2. Yeah, I've been coming here since, I think I was here for the first one back in, what was it, like 07 or 08 or something like that. And I was set up here with my partner Steve Ritter at the time for Worldwide. And so you got a little bug on your end there.
Thank
yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay, there it is. It's off. So, this I've seen the show. It's grown quite a bit. I remember when we first came here. I think it was still the McCormick. Maybe it was a different location, but it was a fraction of the number of people.
Right.
And so it's been really cool to see it grow over the years in terms of attendance. But I love Chicago and I love C2E2. This is like the best show here.
So how are you feeling right now about the panel and the show?
Great. Yeah, the panel went great. Not enough time. I wish it had been an hour. I lost track of time and didn't answer enough questions. But that went great. And then we're doing on-site this weekend. So I got to hustle and get back to finishing grading books before the end of tomorrow, because I still got some people waiting on their books.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you for your time. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for giving me the interview. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk. For sure.